Hi everyone, Professor Dunn here again. I'm having some technical issues here that are driving me a little crazy. And when I go to make this full screen so you can see it better, it jumps through all my images. So I'm going to unfortunately have to leave it like this for this video. So I hope you can see this well enough. So in this video, I'm going to focus on ancient Egypt. And ancient Egypt has many periods or sections the history can be divided up into. But generally speaking, the large broad sections are the Old Kingdom circa 2649 to 2134 BC, the Middle Kingdom circa 2040 to 1064 BC, and the New Kingdom circa 1550 to 1070 BC. Now, some of the videos I have posted show that or explain that there are other smaller sections or periods of time where Egypt wasn't unified or was unified for briefly under a different king, but these are the general large sections of the history and how it's divided up. The first image I want to show you is the Palette of Narmer. And if you can see it, because if I make it bigger, it's going to jump through my images. We can tell that this is Narmer right away because of how large he is. And he's very important. This is saying it's coming from the early dynastic period, circa 2950 BCE, because he is actually before Egypt's united. He is the person that unites Egypt. So Egypt was divided, if you remember in the last video, I said it's divided into two sections. The upper section, which is actually the upper part of the Nile, and then on top of that is the lower part, because that's going down the Nile. So he was from the upper part of Egypt. He conquers the lower part of Egypt, and then he marries the princess from the lower part of Egypt, unifying the two sections of Egypt together. So here he is defeating one of his enemies, and he's already killed two more down here. We know he's, as I said, important because of the sheer size of him, but also because of the headdress that he wears. We also see Horus here, who was one of the very important gods for the Egyptians, and he was a falcon. And on the back of this, it's probably even harder to see, but let's see. I can do this at least. So we have we have Narmer here again. And here he is with his army. And then these people lying like this in rows are actually the enemy that has been killed. And then we have this kind of mythical creature here. And we have a bull here down here again, which was another important god for them. So what I want to do is I want to compare these very quickly just to show you, if you remember when we looked at this, which was the Hall of Bulls in Lascaux Caves, we talked about this one bull here, which is a bull that is done in a composite image, if you remember, is what I said. So it's from a profile, except for the fact that it has a horn, two horns. So it looks like one horn is coming out of its forehead. Well, and I said this is very close to Egyptian in the way Egypt's in people, in the way that they depicted people. So we see that here, that we have the torso, although looking at like it is seen frontally, but the arms are twisted to the side, and the legs are definitely twisted profile, and the head is profile. So it's a way of giving us more information about the thing that we're looking at, but it's not a naturalistic pose. No one stands like this. So we would say this is a composite image, and we see composite images used again and again in this ancient art. Now, one thing that the Egyptians are really well known for are designing and building pyramids. So it starts off very simply with this square shape known. Now these images are also in the notes bigger, so because I'm really sorry about this, but this is a mastaba, and so this is the square base here, and then it has this subterranean tomb that's below the surface. So then they start to take these squares and stack them, making them smaller as they go up, and this becomes known as a step pyramid. And then the last would be a true pyramid when we think of Egyptian pyramids. And the way that the pharaohs were buried in this become more complex over time, because even while they are constructing these and then burying the pharaohs in them, even during the ancient Egyptian time period, they're being plundered. They're having people come in and they're stealing the gold and the artifacts that were in the tomb with the pharaohs. And for the ancient Egyptians, it was very important that the pharaoh not be disturbed and be preserved, and this is why the bodies were mummified. And then the body would be buried with all the things that they thought the pharaoh might need in the afterlife. And it was then believed that he would continue on into the afterlife. Here we have a step pyramid, and so you really see these. I'm having a hard time here today. These steps, as these squares are added one on top of the other, getting progressively smaller. You'll notice that there are other buildings around it, and in fact these pyramids were not like one pyramid in the middle of the desert. There were whole complexes that were built, and they were known as necropolises, which really translates to cities of the dead. The best known probably is the pyramids of Giza, which we'll get to in a second. But here we have a reconstruction of the step pyramid here, and you can see that it really is this large complex. It's just not one pyramid. So here we have the pyramids of Giza, the most definitely well known of the Egyptian pyramids, but there are hundreds and hundreds of pyramids across Egypt, and we'll see in the next section also in Nubia. And I think a lot of people don't realize that in below what we think of as Egypt, there's a whole nother section with pyramids. Now, here we have Cairo off in the distance, and you see that Cairo is very close in proximity to the pyramids here. You have camels here with people on camels, so you can have this understanding of the sheer size. And in fact, the largest one here was the largest human-made structure for hundreds of years after its completion. And you could see at the top of it, it has this different kind of material, and it was limestone, white limestone that was polished, and it covered originally all three of these, so that when you came upon them through the desert, you saw them shining and reflecting the light, because the idea was that these pharaohs that are buried in these pyramids are actually descendants or related in some way to the sun god Ra. And it's a dynasty that is buried here. We have the grandfather, the father, the son. So we have Menkra, Khafra, and Khufu that are buried in these tombs. And here is a reconstruction of it, and you can really see that this is what I'm saying. It's a necropolis. It's a whole complex. And the one here in the middle, we have the Great Sphinx here. And the Great Sphinx, if you know that image, is quite large. People stand on it. It's much bigger than a person. And so you can see how large these are. The Nile is over here, and Cairo is on the other side. So they were able to make this irrigation system to make these reflecting pools from the Nile River. I'm saying over here, but it's it's far. So it was really an amazing accomplishment. So now we'll look at Khafra. And so I have a little video, very short video up about Khafra, who is buried in one of the pyramids. And he sits on his throne here. And notice how stiff his body is. Notice how symmetrical his body is. And youthful, idealized. Did he actually look like this? We don't know. Maybe this was just a projection of like what his best image could be, because during this time period everybody is made like this. They're made very symmetrical, very youthful, not so distinctive in features that make it so that it's very realistic looking. This is idealized. Okay, so he has his beard, which indicates that he is a pharaoh, and also the headdress here. And you can't see it, but it's really beautiful. He's got Horus on the back of him with his wings wrapped around him. And if you watch the video, that's in the video. And then we have Menkra, who was the grandfather, and his queen. And so once again, very rigid in the way and symmetrical in the way he is standing and she is standing. 1 foot forward. We'll see the figure is carved like this for a very long time. Arms at the side, got the beard, got the headdress here. She's very stylized as well with her hair, very serious in the way they look. Her dress she has on is very sheer, but she does have some kind of dress, because you can see the bottom of the top here and the bottom of the skirt here. But we see her body through her clothing. Notice also that the stone is not carved out in between them completely, which would be the negative space. And this is because this is a very hard stone that they're carving in. And when you have a very hard stone, it actually makes it more difficult to carve out the negative space. The stone is more brittle. So if we do a little comparison between these, we see that, they're very similar in the way that they are carved. Once again, symmetrical, stiff, idealized, youthful. Some differences would be that he's sitting, he's standing, he has his queen, he does not have his queen with him. Okay. So we can do a little comparison in that way between them. And even more of a comparison we'll get to is with this person who was a scribe, is a person that writes, and this is called the seated scribe. And so he is not just stone, he's actually carved limestone and then put plaster over it and painted. So he has a much more naturalistic kind of skin tone. He's also not so idealized and youthful like the pharaohs. And this was because it was probably showing that he is older, he's wiser, he knows how to write. Very few people knew how to write in ancient Egypt. And he has a little bit of a belly, which is showing that he was not forced to do physical labor all the time. He was using his mind for his job. And actually, it was lineage of the scribes as well. So if he had a son, the son would become a scribe. There were very few people that knew how to, as I said, knew how to read and write. And I'm going to run out of time here. So I'm going to stop this video and start it up with a comparison in a second.